Here we go.
Welcome to You're On in 5, The Art of Understudying.
The only podcast to celebrate the work of actors in understudy roles.
Understudying demands tons of preparation with minimal rehearsal.
Or sometimes none at all.
But it can end in triumphant glory.
In these conversations, we'll amplify the diverse voices of actors who have understudied. We want to hear about the artist's technique, experience, and journey.
As well as whatever's on our mind that day. Hi, welcome to You're On in 5, The Art of Understudying. I am your host, Scott Sava. You might know me from Northlight's upcoming to me, but in the past to you, birthday candles, in which I will have understudied the role of Kenneth.
And I'm your other host, Elana Elise. You might know me from an Instagram PSA column called Auntie Lon. If you don't, check it out. AUNTIELAN. Hey!
Yeah! And our guest today is Derek Czaplewski. You might know him from Poseidon, an upside-down musical, both in 2002 and 2009 with Helen Hambeck Theater, which I was also in the 2009 edition and the 2018. But we didn't have
I
Derek
saw
for
the
that.
2009 edition.
Oh, what? That's crazy. I was in it the whole time.
I know that now.
That's so much fun. Okay, cool. Welcome, Derek.
Welcome, Derek.
Oh my gosh, you guys, thank you so much for having me. This is an honor. I have been a longtime fan of the show, and I am so excited that you were kind enough to invite me on the show. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for wanting to be here.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Makes all the difference.
I know props is at the end of the show, but props to you two because understudies don't get a lot of recognition, and it is so nice that you guys are highlighting what is arguably, probably, I would say, the hardest job in theater, or at least the most under-recognized. So thanks for elevating the conversation about such a underserved and under-recognized role, right? So thanks for having me, and props to you two right away.
Oh,
Turning the tables on you.
yeah, you did. Sneaky snake. Okay, then, sir. Our first question, as always, as you well know now, what was your first understudy gig?
So my first understudy gig, the company is now long defunct, but there was a company called The Baum House that was BAUM, The Baum House. And back in 2002, I auditioned for a good friend of Scott and mine who has since passed away, Matt Gunnels. I auditioned for him for a show at Emerald City Children's Theater. And I actually was auditioning to be an understudy at Emerald City. And Matt said to me, he's like, I guess you could be an understudy for Emerald City, but you could also come understudy me in a show at the Baum House. Would you rather do that instead? And if for Scott and others who know Matt, he has had a very manipulative way of making you do what he wanted you to do, but making it think like it was your idea. So I was like, yeah, I'll understudy you in this show. The show was called The Hawkshaws, written by a fellow named Talon Bunn. It was a very fun show. It was 2 actors, each played about 7 roles. It was very farcical, a la like Greater Tuna, where you walked off stage and you walked on stage as a new character in a new costume, and the other person was exiting and they were entering in a new costume, and it was just non-stop. And it was a lot of fun and a lot of freaking work, but Matt had a conflict for sure, so I knew I was going to go on. And it was hella fun, but also like, holy shit, like that was my first understudy gig, and it was like, here's a script, you're half the show. Enjoy.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
That's awesome.
It was hella fun.
What like challenges did that present to you? Like, I mean, obviously if it's a two-hander, there's a lot of text. But if it's a farce, there's also a lot of physical comedy and stuff like that. So how did you kind of go about learning all of that and putting it in yourself?
I was very lucky. That was Matt and I had started forming a friendship, and the other understudy was Matt's roommate. So, and the overstudy for, or the guy who played opposite Matt, this fellow Charlie, was also good friends with them. So the four of us could just work kind of nonstop, where the two understudies, Chris and myself, kind of could just run lines as they were running lines. So we had every opportunity to be in the room as much as we wanted. And the director was great. He knew that I was going on. I honestly can't remember if Chris got to go on too, but I felt very supported by Matt, by Charlie, by the whole company. So, it was, I got to be a part of the process. I didn't necessarily get to be up on my feet in every rehearsal or anything like that. But, it was a lot of work. So it was every part had at least a different dialect or, a different track and stuff like that. And, the costumes were well, you're playing a lady in this scene, and then you're sticking your head through a suit to be a little, you're manipulating little hands to be a little puppet character in this scene and stuff like that. And so, I didn't have to have a costume fitting or anything like that. I literally just wore what he wore, which was semi-disgusting because you sweat a lot doing that. But it was just, the usual, highlight your different tracks, run your different parts. It was nice because with the exception of maybe one or two characters, nobody reappeared kind of thing. So, you got to do your one scene as this character, and then you came back maybe once more, but otherwise you were kind of one and done. And, your two main characters were detectives, and then the other characters would pop up and give them a clue and then disappear kind of thing. So it was really just kind of rote memorization and taking every opportunity to be are you guys done teching? Can I just jump in here and walk through this on my own with, the other understudy? And they were very supportive. So they were a very small company. And like I said, I don't, long gone, but they were college friends, and they were let's just put a company together. And they were smart enough, though. They were nope, we all had understudies in college, so we're having understudies in our company too.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
I want to ask about the Emerald City audition. They already had their cast, and they were having separate auditions for understudies.
I believe that was the first time I auditioned for them. I ended up working with them a whole bunch, but I think they had already had their cast, and this was kind of generals. And so they kind of had their basic cast set, and Matt just needed understudies for, I think it was a production of Tarzan, I want to say. And he's you could be an understudy for Tarzan, but also, what about this shiny penny over here kind of thing?
Yeah, for sure. And that would have been, you went to school for theater.
I did, yes.
And so at your school, what school did you go to?
I went to Bradley University in Peoria, Illinois.
And in their shows at school, they always had understudy.
Not at all. No.
Oh, at where Matt went to school.
Correct. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes. I believe so. Yeah.
All right. So I was trying to tie that together to ask you, what was your expectation? What did you understand about understudying that you willfully went to auditions where you knew that was the case? And so what were your thoughts about being an understudy, what that might be like, etc.?
Yeah, that's a great question. And honestly, I don't think I really knew, because before it had kind of just been a box on a form, right? Are you willing to understudy?
Right.
Yes or no? Because at college, we did not do that unless we had a guest actor come in. I recall when we did the Merry Wives of Windsor, we had a guest actor come in, and he played Falstaff, and we had a student actor understudy him that got to go on and do one performance or something like that, right? So, but that was the extent of it. We didn't really talk about it. It wasn't part of our education as in college theater. So for me, it was kind of just I guess you're the guy who's ready to go on if the lead guy gets a better job or gets sick, right? So that was it, and And it's funny, both either, I don't remember who, it was either Matt or Charlie or Chris, one of the three guys that I worked with, basically said, if you're going to understudy, make sure you're doing it with good people, or it's a good part, or you get to go on, or they're paying you something. Make sure one or two of those boxes is ticked. Otherwise, they might just be using you. You know what I mean?
That's excellent advice.
Yeah.
I love that.
And I carry that with me for every decision. Every time I was checking that box moving forward, it was like, well, it's good people, or, oh, I think they pay, or I really want to do the show. Something like that, right? Like there has to be, you can't just go in willy-nilly because it's a lot of fucking work. It's a lot of fucking work.
And honestly, I think those are good. That's a good guideline for even overstudy roles, for principal roles, for being in a show, like all those things. I know, for some of us, it's our main income and work is work. But if you have the luxury to be selective, those
Absolutely
points make all the difference for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Derek, what was like? I mean, you've had several understudy gigs. What like? Can you kind of take us just generally through those experiences? Like, was there one that stood out as like a disaster?
I will, so there have been some highs and lows. Oh, trip through memory lane. The one that comes to mind for me that was like that was incredibly difficult, like that I would not do again, was I understudied It's a Wonderful Life, the radio drama at American Theater Company years ago. And I understudied the announcer who, welcome to Bedford Falls and nestle up by the fire and here's George Bailey kind of thing. Fine, we'd do that again in a heartbeat. The other role I understudied was the Foley, was the sound guy. So every time a door opened, I opened the door. Every time the bell rang, I had to ring the bell. Every time the snow falls, I'm cranking the machine. You know what I mean? So it really wasn't an acting understudy gig so much as understudying a living soundboard. That was fucking hard. And I thankfully never had to go on. I wouldn't say that was a nightmare. Maybe I'm exaggerating there, but it was really hard. And I was like, halfway through the run, I was like, watching the guy do it, he was masterful. But had I had to go on, it would have been a small nightmare. It would have, just the nuances of, as soon as he says this line, ring the little bell. And as soon as, she starts to run and cry, rip up the paper and all this stuff, like that's not a performance that's easy to capture. That is a technical recreation, right? Yeah, that stands out as something I would not want to encounter again.
I would think that they would. I mean, did you when you auditioned for that one, did you have any experience in that kind of thing at all? Like, I don't know, even as a stage manager or something? Like,
not in the least. I honestly don't know how I ended up at that. I think I went to their generals and, they just offered me an understudy gig and I said yes. And this is a common theme throughout of just saying yes when maybe I should have said no. You know what I mean? Like it's and in listening to your podcast, I've heard other people say similar things, right? In fact, when you had Lenisa Fredericks on, she and I went to the school at Steppenwolf together, and there is definitely that. I forgot what she said exactly. Something about the Midwest nice, right? Of like, yeah, sure, I'd be very happy to understudy your show. That's happened to me on a couple occasions where, in retrospect, it's like, why did you say yes to this? Not that it was a bad experience because you still learn something from it, right? You still can learn and grow, but there is just, because it is such a big lift that you're asking from somebody to do, that in retrospect, it's like, why did I agree to basically understudy a living soundboard, kind of thing. I don't know.
Did you have any understudy rehearsals for that one?
We did, but not a lot. And of course, every time we did have a rehearsal, I was like, I'm ready to go on for the announcer in a heartbeat. The Foley. Well, yeah, I guess we should rehearse that too, shouldn't we? Yeah.
Derek, I know that show at the Baum House was 2 actors with 7 characters, but how many actors / tracks have you understudied at once?
I think I have done 3 tracks a lot, which again is a lot. It's not to be on the negative Nancy train here, but again, that's it's a lot to do here. I'll talk a little bit about another experience here. I understudied Avenue Q when the Mercury Theater did it, and I am a huge Muppet fan. I have loved all things Muppets and Jim Henson for my entire life, and when Avenue Q came along, I fell in love with the show and the chance to be a part of it. I was like, oh my God, Avenue Q, this is my favorite thing in the world. Auditioned for it in a heartbeat. And, they called me up and they're like, we would love for you to understudy. And I was like, okay. And they're like, we'd love for you to understudy Brian. And I was like, great. That's the part I really wanted to be. They're like, and we'd also like for you to understudy Trekkie. Okay, fine. And we'd also like for you to understudy Nikki. And I'm like, all righty. That's a big lift.
Wow.
And it was. And it, again, a learning lesson. I as actors, we're always taught to, say yes to stuff, right? And just go with the flow and do your best and tackle everything. But I know for myself, I sing okay. I can sing well enough, but like harmonies, not so much. Just can't do it, right? I've had vocal coaches. I've had a lot of patient musical directors, but I just can't sing or hold harmonies. It's just a thing I can't do. And unfortunately, Avenue Q does have some not terribly hard harmonies, but for somebody who can't sing harmonies, it's just not in my wheelhouse. And that plus the fact that like Nikki is Trekkie's left hand, so I'm the understudy for both hands, was just not well thought out, right?
Wow.
Like, yeah, like I'm manipulating Trekkie's head and his left hand, but then Nikki is Trekkie's right hand. You know what I mean? So like the logistics of understudy rehearsal itself, like, there's rules with equity. You can't always call in the principals for every understudy rehearsal. Mm-hmm. So like there are just some logistical problems with that. So although I loved the show and the experience was not bad, it was just I was petrified to go on because of my own limitations in terms of singing, but then also because I didn't ever get the opportunity to fully feel comfortable with the requirements because there were just limitations of what I could do in the given time with being my own full self.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you ever get to go on?
I did not.
None of those roles. And that was a long run too, right?
That was, although the show extended, and I think when they extended, I could not continue. I think I had something else lined up. I think I had a children's theater show lined up that, so I did not extend, which was ultimately for the best. It gave my heart a little bit of a rest.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing worse than feeling underprepared as an understudy, as you both well know, right? Like it's you can do the work, but if you ultimately don't feel 100% confident and comfortable, it's gonna gnaw at you, right?
Yeah, it's terrifying. I like one of 2 times that I understudied a comedy institution that I was not actually an understudy for, but was called in, I guess, out of desperation. And so that first time there was a song, and the final note of that song, I'm like, I ain't fucking with that. So I would just drop out, right? Like we all aligned, in front of the stage, and we're like, the last line was your flight has been delayed, and that delayed was held. And so I just dropped my voice out. That weekend, though, the other female was sick, and so if I drop out now, it's gonna be very obvious that I was just three men here holding this note. And even though I'm an alto, it's still like we're supposed to be six people singing. So I was horrified, but all I could do was do it, and I did it. And so then it became like this big, proud, crowning moment. Like, I didn't know I could do that. Like, I thought I was going to ruin the whole moment or whatever, but I hit that note of that delayed, and and then I floated on. It was great. But like, prior to that, I just was like, I didn't have the confidence. That really was, with my singing voice, period, that's what it's always been. And I've gratefully come a long way since then. I've had some coaching and whatnot, and I'm familiar with how my voice works, so it's better. But at that time, it was not. And also, I had been told by a director as a teenager, like, if we go with singing first, meh. If we go with acting first, you're in.
Wow, awesome. What a motivational coach he should be.
I literally didn't sing in another audition until I lived in Chicago in my 30s. So I was a teenager. He said that. I sang in the shows I sang in, like I didn't have to audition for those, So I did not go to another audition where I had to sing until I was here. And the first time I did it here, it was like an out of body experience. Like I was so nervous that at 32 or 33 years old, whoever was over there called me adorable. Right? And I was like, I'm not sure that's what I wanted to hear, but still, anyway, enough about me. But yeah, confidence in singing makes a huge difference.
Absolutely.
If you're not tone deaf, if you're tone deaf, then all the confidence in the world isn't gonna help.
I've been absolutely right. I've been so lucky, like in the children's theater and the camp shows, and I've done lots of like even Sondheim shows. Like I've always had like these super patient musical directors, and I've done like vocal coachings and stuff. But like there's just I can't there's certain things I just can't do, and that's my own limitation. I recognize that, so I'm not gonna try to like pretend this is something that is going to go away on its own, but it is, I know that's a thing that that's a limitation for me, and that's okay. Right. But like, it is just one of those things that kind of sucks when it's like, cause I love musicals. I just fucking love them. Right. Stereotypical gay trait, but I do. And it's, so I wish I could sing better. Right. And I've tried and I've worked at it, and it's like, you know what, I sing good enough in some cases. And that's just a limitation, and that's okay. Not everyone can do everything, right? So
they say.
Can I just say real fast? Derek, I met you doing a musical, and you had the lead in the musical. He was Reverend Scott in Poseidon, the Gene Hackman character. So like, for you to be saying that you're not super confident, I'm just like, what? You were Reverend Scott.
Go on. Let's talk about connections, because you did the same thing I did. So when we first did Poseidon in 2002, right? Yes. Mm-hmm. Same situation for me. I was in the ensemble, and I ended up understudying and going on in the show, and it was great. And it was like the best I could ask for. Like the whole ensemble was there, right? Like I never felt I was going to fail. They were always like supportive and with me. It was awesome, right? And I knew I was going on. I don't think I knew right away. I think it was sort of like throughout rehearsals. Eventually, the guy I was understudying, Talon, he was doing like the purser and the doctor, I think. And he was finishing his MFA, I want to say, at like DePaul or something like that. So he had lots of like scattered conflicts. And so I kind of just stepped in like during rehearsals, and it just kind of kept happening. And actually, when we went to record the cast album, he wasn't available that night. So I'm even on the cast album. I was singing his song. So yes, my issues with singing are long and deep and weird and whatever. But yes, it's just. But it was such a like. That was like a great experience understudying, right? Like never for 1 minute did I feel like I was unsupported or left out on my own, right? Or anything like that. Like that was like all you could ask for and more. Like if I'd have forgotten a line or forgotten a dance step or anything like that, I knew there were 28 people behind me who had my back, right? Like, and then, yeah, to watch you do it 7 years later was amazing, right? Like just, it was like a little nice full circle moment. And then you did Poseidon again 7 years after that or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Right. I wasn't in that one, but it was just, it is funny. I just, yeah, it's, there are it's such a funny thing with understudying, right? You can have just like these amazing experiences, and then you can have these experiences that are like, I'm developing an ulcer.
Yeah.
Right.
The thing about Handbag, that was Helen Handbag Theater that did that, and I'm not even sure they were officially Helen Handbag when you did the first Poseidon.
They had just become Helena Handbag.
Okay.
They were previously existed as Sweetback Productions, and they had David and had sort of started as on his own as Handbag with a couple other folks. Yeah,
There's your queer history minute.
there you
go. And but you know, I with Handbag, like, because they're a non-equity company, and you know, the budget, like, I mean, not that they need a big budget, because, you know, it's campy and shoestring is kind of part of that. But even with that, like, same thing. I always felt supported. I got to put in. Almost all the actors in the cast came to it, and I think it was on an off night. And it's interesting because, you know, like, they don't really have to, you know, help their understudies so much. But I mean, I think they understood that if they want a good performance, they do have to. So yeah, and I mean, and also, I mean, we both met many of our like long-term friends from that show. And I think that just goes to show what a nice group of people Handbag is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that lifelong friends and people that, you know, even if I haven't seen them for months or years or whatever, it's like, oh my God, you know, it's yeah, there's it's just, you know, it happens. You know, I think we all have that, right? Like you just kind of make those connections with folks, and, you know, it's like, well, you're stuck with me. Sorry.
Right. Yes,
Whether you want to or not, we're friends.
I've said those words to people.
Yep.
Scott, in the spirit of everything that we're trying to do here, I want to pull that thread that makes you say they don't have to. Right? Like, what makes you, why do you say that about a theater? I know part of it is like, they're not equity. They're not legally obligated to.
Right.
But like, given everything, what do you think about those words coming out?
I think I think people have done more with less. Like, you can get away with maybe not even having understudies, even, especially, you know, going back further a couple decades. And so many times the understudy is just completely the last thing they think about, you know? And I mean, you can do that. It's a risk, because, you know, well, you're going to get caught with your pants down if when they get sick. I guess I'm saying that from the perspective of a producer who doesn't give a fuck.
Okay. I mean,
right.
okay. You know, because no one has to, sure. but everyone should. And I don't know that, and I think that I would rather think, but you do have to, like you said in the rest of when you were talking, like if you want people to be, you want your show to go on and you want it to be successful, regardless of what may happen, then you do have to. But I also think that that's part of the point of our existence. And as Derek so eloquently, remarked on, right? Like this is like, that is that those are things that I hope that people, decision makers and actors, because we have more power than we think. When we pull ourselves out of that, we have to say yes, kind of teachings we many of us experienced of our age group anyway. So like I just thought it was interesting. It popped out at me, right? Like that there's still that little bit still in you that would say, even now today, they do all this really great stuff. They don't really have to. They don't really have to because people weren't doing it the way they were doing it and it was accepted, right? When like, but they should be doing it. Everybody should be doing everything that they've done to make sure their understudies are prepared all along. And we should start believing that that's a thing that they have to do, because we also want understudies to not only be as a matter of emergency. We want actors to be able to get jobs even though they have a wedding to attend or a family reunion to attend, or or some travel already booked, even if it's not that, but they can still get a job because there's an apt, competent, and prepared understudy ready to go, right? Like that's the thing that hopefully the direction we're hopefully going to industry wide across the fucking world.
Yeah.
I'm shutting up. Soapbox destroyed now.
No. So I want to share a story that carries off this. So my most recent understudy experience, which was a couple of years back, wasn't the greatest. And I'll give you just a little bit of background, but it was for an equity house. It was a low equity house, but the show was 4 folks in the 4 principals, 4 overstudies, and there were 3 understudies, myself and 2 ladies, and one lady had 1 role. Myself, I was only covering one man, and the other understudy covered 2 roles. And so there was just the 3 of us. And as is very typical, our first rehearsal was after opening, right? And why that's the case, I don't know. But that just is. It's silly, but that's how it goes. At this first rehearsal, our stage manager was equity, but she was young. She was a little green. And she was kind of drilling us. This was our first time on the set. All we had done is run lines. So we were on the set. There's a scene at a restaurant. So she's like, can we stop and go back? Can you make sure that you pick up your fork on this line because I need to call the sound cue off that one, kind of thing. Okay, sure. So let's go back and do that, right? Sorry, what line? Okay, back and forth like this for most of the rehearsal. Tedious, to say the least. At some point, a marketing person, we'll say, comes in to drop off some postcards or something like that. Sits and watch for maybe, 15 minutes of this or so, goes on. The next day, the 3 of us and the stage manager get an email from the artistic director of this company eviscerating us for being unprepared understudies. I mean, this was a 3-page email telling us how unprofessional we were, how we should have been ready to go on opening night, how how secondhand or third hand, however this information got to this fellow, how we should have been known our lines backwards and forwards, how this, I'm sure I still have the email saved somewhere, or I either immediately deleted it or whatever. But I mean, just on and on and on about how poorly prepared and unprofessional we were. The 3 of us were just floored, right? I think we met. I'm sure there were some tears, right? Like we just felt like we had been punched in the gut, kicked in the fucking balls, something, right? Like We did eventually have a rehearsal like 2 days later, I think, with the stage manager. The stage manager was, she was green, but she was resilient. And she was like, don't worry about it. You guys know your stuff. Don't worry about it. But the three of us were absolutely deflated. I think when we talked, we were ready to walk because we had felt like we were so mistreated by the artistic director of this company who had not even firsthand seen this rehearsal. Like, why should we spend our time, energy, effort to be treated like this when your show depends on our work, our presence? It was honestly, I can't remember when I have felt more disrespected as an actor. And this relates to what I think you're trying to say, right? The whole, they don't have to, but they should. And in some cases, even the leadership of quote unquote respected theater companies don't, even though they should. It was just perplexing, to say the least.
It makes me livid. I'm rocking my energy. My angry energy doesn't have anywhere to go. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. That's such shit.
Yeah.
Insane.
I find it so disappointing. And that is willful, and there is an awareness that comes with that, right? Like, I have ton of storefront. I've worked in some equity houses. I'm not equity, but my storefront experience, what I've been able to observe, even as on the producing side, is a lot of what's been done has been a matter of habit, right? So like you said, that first rehearsal after opening, what happens if I needed somebody in on previews, right? Like, but that is like, not a willful disregard, right? And as I have had the opportunity outside of the company that I was working for, like even as an actor in some areas, I've had the opportunity to point out a few things that could maybe help the understudies or me as an understudy. That light bulb is usually seen, and then attempts have been made, right? Which is very different from, I just have a hard time understanding that at an AD, knowing that there hadn't been any organized rehearsals up to that point, wouldn't understand the necessity of that in order to get what they were berating you about, right? Like, you can't get that without that. And it doesn't matter. Some of us come in off book in the first place, but like there's if we haven't gotten up on our feet, if we haven't been walked through the set, if we're not, it's not gonna be right away. And like, also, dumb snitch, like, what are you even talking about? You know what I mean? Like, I don't care for that either. Like, none of that. And in what way did they expect you all to respond to that, right?
Yes.
Like, you didn't walk, they didn't expect you to walk, and you didn't, but you had every right to. And it certainly didn't improve your capabilities for the next time, not that. Like, because even if you were ready and geared up, the deflation, the personal, the feeling of your humanity being bruised would have an impact on what you would do next. And so that is such a, like, for real, like, I feel like every episode this season, something has pissed me off.
That's true.
And it's just unbelievable, because how do you lose sight of, you can't even do what you need to do without human beings. And in all realms of existence, like, the better you treat people, the better results you get across the board. Like, how dare they?
And to not take responsibility for it. Like, it's, if the understudies aren't ready, maybe that's your fault, like, and also, like, the expectations of what that first rehearsal should have been, like, that's insane that they think, oh, first rehearsal, nobody's going to call line, everybody knows every single cue. That is absurd. Like, even if you were the most prepared person, you get up on stage for that first time and something's gonna slip, you know? And so, like, yeah, for that expectation is absurd.
Also, just the sheepish manner in which you convey this through, well, first of all, I don't. I'd like to think that it was not someone directly being sent to spy on us. However, the relation of the information definitely feels like a "so I saw this happen" kind of thing, right? But the choice to send an email versus, say, attending the next rehearsal and looking at it with your own eyes in person to witness the rehearsal and seeing for yourself, oh, this is not the case. These are clearly prepared people who are just, say, sitting on the fucking furniture for the first fucking time, right? Or putting on a costume for the first fucking time, like the natural things that are going to cause some lag or delay, no matter how rote you may be with your lines. Like, that's just literally the first understudy rehearsal. It was, it left a bad taste. I will say that person has moved on from their role quite some time ago. This was not too recently, not in the immediate past. So, but yeah, it was a kick in the teeth, kick in the balls, whatnot. So, yeah.
Good riddance.
Yes. we can talk about happier things, I promise.
No, that's good. That's like, hey listeners, don't be shit people. There, take that lesson.
Darn right.
All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with Derek Czaplewski after this. You're on in 5. We're back with Derek Czaplewski, and now it's time for the breakdown.
All right, Derek. Our question for you this time is, what do you think about reviews and or critics?
Oh, I got so many feelings about this.
Bring it.
So I have, okay. So Avenue Q, we talked about this earlier. I was understudying it. On opening night, I remember a fellow, I'm not going to name him by name, but he came up to me and we were chatting. He is an actor. And we were casually chatting, and I was like, I don't even remember how it came up, but it was like, "What are you doing here?" or kind of thing. Like, you just think he's an actor there seeing it, but he's holding a press packet, and he's like, "Oh, I'm here as a reviewer," and I'm like, I don't think that's cool. If you're in the industry as a performer, but also you're here as a critic, that seems weird, right? That's a line I don't think you get across, right? Like, you can have an opinion, obviously. You can go on your social media and share your opinion. But if you're being paid by like a website or a publication or something, and you also are a performer in this industry, that just left a bad taste in my mouth, right? I get that press is a necessary evil, I suppose, but I would like to think it would be one of those things that I kind of wish could just, I don't know, go away or have less power than it does, especially in Chicago, because we're kind of a one-horse town now, right? And I think I don't want to name names, but our British theater critic is a very fine writer, but I can't believe that a town the size of Chicago has put so much power in the hands of essentially one critic, right? It used to be better a couple of years ago when there was Time Out and there was The Reader and there was even the Sun-Times, right? Like, so there was a little more diversity, but speaking to Chicago...
That's an interesting word to use there.
Fair. Okay, not diversity. There was a few more platforms, shall we say. A few more...
I will say, yes. We experienced a person of color from that publication reviewing Here Lies Henry. And so I will like, since diversity came up, as it happens, that's what happened. And it was great. And gratefully, he loved Here Lies Henry.
Nice.
Yeah.
So yes, I'm maybe I'm whitewashing things inappropriately.
No, I mean, no, you're not. It was like an exception, to be fucking sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, looking at it right now, it just seems like if we need to have critics, then we need more of them, and we need them to see everything, not just the bigger house shows,
For sure.
not just the touring shows. You know what I mean? Like they need to see everything from the tiniest little, 10-person theater to the 1,000-person theater and everything in between. And they need to, experience everything in between.
Do you read reviews for shows you're in while you're in them?
I try to avoid it because it inevitably can lead to awkwardness sometimes.
Like among the cast, or
yeah, because because there are people who will run in and talk about the reviews, and then there will be those people who are like, I don't read reviews, so I kind of try to play it neutral, right? Because I respect both points of view, right? And also like even nice reviews can still have not great things in them, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was in a show out at Circle Theater, and it was a lovely review. However, one of the adjectives used to describe one of my female co-stars' bodies was not, you know what I mean? And so like it was still a positive review it was undeniably positive. But there was an adjective that was like, really? Did you have to use that fucking word to describe this woman's body? Really? You know what I mean? It wasn't even necessarily like a slanderous word or anything, but it still just left a bad taste, right? And it was like, you couldn't just left that word out. Just one little fucking word, right? And it was like, shit like that. It's like, do we need this energy backstage? Is this part of our story? Is this part of our experience? No. So wait till after, at least, right? Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
Those are my thoughts. What about you guys?
Do you like to know when a critic is in the audience, or do you not want to know?
That's a good question. I think I'd prefer not to know, because you should be telling the same basic story, right? Like it shouldn't affect what you're doing. But sometimes it's hard not to. Yeah.
I like knowing that they're there, so that I'm not taken aback by no, like if I can see. And again, most of my experiences is in houses where I can see the audience well enough. So if I wasn't aware prior, and I see people like writing, that's annoying.
That's fair.
But it doesn't bother me to know. It doesn't change what I set out to do with whatever show. And I will read. I have been lucky enough to, if I am mentioned since being in Chicago, it has been positive. I have been not mentioned when I thought, hello, I was there. And then also, some of the worst reviews I've seen for shows I'm in were in Detroit. But what was fun about that, the worst one I'll say, because it wasn't a string of bad ones or anything, but there was this one, and there was like a show that had been written from improv. It wasn't at Second City, but a theater where a lot of offshoots of Second City was, and he really panned our show, but we so beautifully used pull quotes from his stuff in our promotions, and it was so satisfying. Also, we didn't care. It was kind of a camp show or whatever. We were having a good time. We were always having a good time, so we didn't super care, but that's what made it so delightful to like grab these quotes. And like one of them I'll never forget, because we ended up like, we did a poster kind of that was like Bit of a Dog is what he called our show.
Oh.
But still, the way we played with it was fantastic. Like, we loved it. I have been on the cover of the arts and entertainment section twice, and then that has led to people like bringing me copies of the paper. So, so like that's, and it feels nice. On the, I also wish it didn't matter, and I don't know how much it truly does anymore, right? Like, I don't know. It's like how we gave diamonds value and vodka, value. Like, vodka is one of my favorite stories about how it's like the tiers of value of vodka is really just bullshit. And the industry, if you ask them, they will admit it, right? So it's not really super clear to me anymore how impactful that is. Because, well, one, the places that are closing for other reasons having nothing to do with what our friend has said about shows, right? Like there's that. And then the larger companies are doing the work, and people who are thirsty for theater are still going, like it's just like this weird kind of like, I genuinely don't know how much value it truly holds, aside from us all thinking that it matters so much.
Right? You could absolutely be right. Absolutely. It feels, and I'll be honest, I am out of touch in many ways with the post-pandemic theater world. I see closures and my heart hurts, because it's like, I'm not as involved as I once was, and I want to get back into it. Because it's so much fun. It's so amazing and unique and different and unique. And I just, miss being a part of that. But at the same time, exactly what your point is, right? Like, are these closures because of economic ramifications that have been building now for a couple of years? Are these can't just be ticket driven sales, right? Like, you can't just be closing because you're like, we didn't sell enough tickets last show, right? Like, that can't be the only issue. But once upon a time, if you didn't get a 4-star review in the Chicago Tribune, you could absolutely put your sales, you know what I mean? Talk about how your sales were to blame because of said review, right? Well, we only got a 2-star review in the Tribune, so we don't have any ticket sales, so we're closing early, shit like that. That was once upon a time, that was absolutely the map that was drawn. Yeah, but because I'm a little out of touch, I don't know if that's how that financial picture plays out these days. Yeah. That was long-winded. Sorry.
No,
real dull and insightful.
No, it's true. I don't know either.
It's weird for me because growing up, like, I read the arts and entertainment section in the Tribune, the Friday section, and ate up these reviews. Mostly film reviews. I think I'm not really sure I was reading a whole lot of theater reviews, but like, that was how I would know about what was even playing in the city. And so now I can't really say that I've ever gotten a really great review. Which is weird.
You got great reviews for Henry.
Okay. I got, when Elana directed me, I got good reviews.
I wasn't blaming me, but okay. I'll take it.
But it feels good when it happens to know that the work you've been doing is being seen in a positive light. And I think, the week after a show opens, I do try to kind of like, it's not like a thing where I'm like, Monday morning, we got to look at those reviews, but, and that's not even a thing anymore. But over the course of the week, it'll dawn on me, oh, maybe a review came out for that show, and with a lot of the stuff that we do in non-equity, and a lot of the critics being a little bit more conservative, you might say. Um, uh, it's very easy to just be like, oh, well, they didn't get it. That sucks for them. And,
Yeah.
you don't want to think too much about the implications. And for me personally, like, I think I just want to tell people when they've done an amazing job. I kind of want to be quiet when I didn't like what they did, but or at least find something that I liked about it, and be honest about that. I remember a few years ago there was a group, I can't remember what their name was, but it was a bunch of like actors and theater artists who wanted to create a like a place for critique within the community. And I don't think it lasted very long. I think because I think there was infighting or something, I don't know. But it was an interesting idea. I kind of liked it for a little while. But yeah, no, it's tricky when you have that conflict of interest of being an artist and a critic. I mean, we of course all have critical thoughts. But when you're an artist, I get this way during improv, because I've been doing a lot of improv lately, and it's just like some people will see improv and they'll be like, "Oh, that was a bad improv show. I couldn't stand that," And like for me, watching an improv show, I guess I'm always hoping for it to connect, or you're waiting for that moment where something real happens, and I think as an artist, like, that's the best mindset to be in. Not to say that we can't see when people do bad work or when something doesn't work. But generally, I think it's best to keep it positive as an artist.
I have several things to say. Now, one of them is there was a person who directed who also wrote reviews and was not very good at it. And a lot of the time they were writing about what they wish whatever they had watched was, and not about what it was. And I thought that unfortunate, because that's not what that play was ever supposed to be or whatever, right? Like, what if you're watching something through the lens of what you would have written, then I think you should go write plays and make things that you would like to see, right? However, another criticism of critics is often they don't know. They don't have enough knowledge about it or education about plays or whatever. But I think that it's helpful when some kind of background is present, whether it's knowledge of like what processes might be like. There are a lot of little bits and pieces, right, that a reviewer could benefit from being exposed to if their career is criticizing theater. Now, that said, then I don't think it's necessarily an absolute no-no for an artist to review, right? Because now we have a person who does have some knowledge, who has created or, ideally has lived an experience that creates an expectation that it's reasonable for them to be measuring against, right? Which doesn't mean measuring against one's own supposed talent or how one would direct a show or whatever, right? That can exist. Like, if I am 100% confident that I could review, and if I ever did it, I wouldn't do it as myself, right? Like, but that I could write fair and honest reviews, even though I've been in this game since I was 7 years old. I dare say I feel like I could write fair and honest reviews because I've been in this game since I was 7 years old. And I am a person who, like, when I'm watching plays, I'm not thinking about the casting choices. I'm not thinking about, the only time that those things are lifted to me is if something is awry. If something is happening that's keeping me from focusing on the story at hand. Right? Those things stand out, and then it's like, it's distracting. Like blackouts between every scene. Fuck that. You know, like, fuck that. What is that? What are we doing? Why are we doing that? And I don't want a fucking 6-second blackout between every. That bothers me as a spectator, right? Like, but I know what a blackout is because I'm an actor, right? You know, so that's like that kind of context. So I don't think it's an absolute no. I do struggle when people are, you know, criticizing what a production wasn't. I also have a hard time with reviewers giving an entire synopsis, the details about the production. Like, and there was a time, I forget what show I was doing, but we had this really nice moment in this show. I was in it, and it was nice for the audience to discover that. And one of those like blog reviewers like gave that away, and I got to see it in the middle of the night, like the night it was published, and I emailed them and said, hey, you know, I'd really love for the audience to experience it the way you did, like, because they were praising it, you know, like it was like a delight for them, you know, so like it'd be great if you would remove that. And they didn't respond to me, but they did remove that, you know. But I've like over the past like 6-7 years, it's been a lot of like, here's the entire play. That's not what you're there to do. And what's the value of your review if you're just giving the whole story away anyway? You know, like, you're not helping us by getting people to want to come see it necessarily, because you've given everything that might be fun to see, or that they might have questions about, or whatever. Like, you've given it all away. That's been like my struggle with them. Other than that, as a byproduct of things that have just been accepted in the industry, like, I'm like, that's fine. Like, I don't care that they're there. Don't distract me. Don't write stupid stuff. And don't be mean, you know. And like, so even, you know, like some things are just stupid, but like coming from a place of positivity, like, I gratefully am a person who, you know, all my friends are talented, really, and we've all done some shitty shows in our lives, so I don't have to say anything positive if I didn't find anything positive, you know, without them being offended, because I won't, right? Like, I don't want to. You know, and like, there are those times where I'm like, I saw your show, yay, you know, and they know exactly. So I'm not, you know, I don't know. It just seems harder for me in terms of whatever my, the way I move through the world to work to try and find something positive about things that I just didn't enjoy. You know, even though that's a great practice to live with and by, I love it. Yay, I'm glad that you do that. You know, I just it doesn't matter. You know, I'm supporting, and I know my friends are talented. Like, I am so lucky. And across disciplines too. So my actor friends, my director friends, my musician friends, my vocalist friends, like ones who I call friend, are genuinely talented. And so if they happen to be in a bad production, it's no sweat. And the other beauty of that is that they usually know it's a bad production too, right? Like, so it's not like a lot of like, did you see what I did up there? Yeah. You know, was it great? Did you like it? They know, you know. So I'm lucky in that. I'm grateful because I don't have time, you know, like, I'm glad you're working, you know, like, and that's the other problem with me, is like, any kind of thing like that I could say or would say or think to say, it's definitely clear that I'm trying to find something positive to say, right. You know, and like, let's not waste all our time, you know, so.
The lighting was really fantastic, right?
Exactly, right?
You were up there doing it.
You did it.
You were doing it.
You did a show, and I came. Yeah. Well, then it's time for props.
All right, so Derek, in this section of the show, as you damn well know, we we like to give props to actors that have understudied us, or that we've seen understudy, or that we've understudied. Anybody from stage managers to assistant directors who have helped you in your experiences. Yeah. What do you got for us?
Yes, I wrote some down, but like also like, oh, I have a terrible memory, so it's a good thing I don't not currently understudying anything, but it's the volume of people, and I realized earlier I'm like, understudying is the hardest thing to do. Stage managing is also fucking hard ass shit, and also often goes remarkably like ignored and under respected, and like those people are fucking ballers.
Fuck yeah.
Right. I'm gonna shout out like props to Anna Espinoza. She was my stage manager on a show Weekend that I did understudied at Timeline Theater. Laura Glenn, who was an awesome stage manager that I worked with out at Northlight when I understudied Sense and Sensibility out there. Ellen Willett. I never actually. I just worked with her on when I was an overstudy, but I worked with her numerous times doing a bunch of kid shows at Lifeline Theater, and she's awesome, and she's extra awesome because for like 5 years she gave me her Netflix password. So when I was like super poor, she was awesome, even a little extra. I could not find this woman's name, but I think it was like their closing weekend. The Goodman was doing God of Carnage, and it was the three principals that I think I saw were Dave Pasquesi, Keith Comfer, and Mary Beth Fisher, all of whom are pretty well-respected, working, notable theater actors. The fourth actor was an understudy, and she was fucking phenomenal. And I don't have the program anymore because this was years ago, and I couldn't find her name on the website, and I tried Googling it. She's the mom who has to puke on stage in God of Carnage, and the three of them were perfectly fine. They were very lovely. It was their closing weekend. I'm not sure how long she had been going on, but she fucking blew me away. She was the understudy, and like the three of them were just like doing their job, but she was like electric, and she stuck with me, and I remember her as an understudy and just being blown away. So whoever she was, I'm sorry I don't know your name, but props to her because she was fucking awesome. Kudos to you. Unnamed understudy, which feels shitty that I can't find her name, right? Like, God, I'm contradicting everything I've said. Yeah, the internet, Google was useless, unhelpful to me. Yeah, those are my props. I'm sure there's a million more other people, but those are the ones that I wanted to shout out specifically because they're awesome.
Yeah, awesome.
Yay, thank you.
Now you guys.
So concise and to the point. We love it.
He was prepared.
Yes.
And I love it.
Yeah.
Scott, you've been out there working. Anybody? Any props from you?
Oh, yeah. Well, I will say, I don't think there were any understudies on the show that I saw, but I saw the Who's Tommy at Goodman Theater, and it fucking blew me away. Like, I mean, I'm always like any musical, and especially a rock musical, but like, man, did that thing move? There were so many technical things going on, projections and furniture moving around, and it was fucking amazing.
I heard incredible things about it.
Yeah, I had a student, one of my students from Theater of Western Springs, was playing Little Tommy, like age 4 Tommy, and she was excellent. So that was really nice. I guess that's my prop for her, to Ava Rose Doty.
Yay, you did it.
Yeah. All right. Well, Derek, we'd like to wrap up the show with a question of what is something that either you wish you knew when you started, or you would love to tell somebody starting off now, either about understudying or about acting or about artistry or anything like that.
Yeah. I think I've kind of touched on them a little bit as we've been speaking, but like first and foremost, like it's okay to say no. You know what I mean? Like, don't overcommit yourself. Don't stress yourself. Don't put yourself in situations that you know aren't ultimately going to be things that you want to do. There's a lot of work out there. There's a lot to do, and saying yes to everything is eventually going to lead to burnout. And, as much as we talk about like self-care, self-care is not just, bubble baths and eating dessert. Self-care is like straight up get yourself a good therapist, right? Yes. And I know you've had other guests say that, and I I raise my hand to the sky every time they do it. And I will couple that with God, our country is just it's amazing in so many ways, but it's also fucked in so many ways. So get yourself health insurance. I went years without health insurance, and I was lucky because I could find therapists that would do like cash only sliding scale sometimes, right? But then other times I couldn't do that and stuff. So like, but like, as for young actors starting out, I hate to say it, but prioritize health insurance. Ideally one that does get you some sort of mental health assistance, right? Whether it pays for your mental health therapy sessions or partially pays, because it's world's fucked in a lot of ways. So be kind to yourself, and don't just say yes to everything, because that's your, I think at least that was my tendency as a young person, right? Was to be eager and say yes to everything. And although you should have enthusiasm for life, if you say yes to everything, it can just lead to burnout. And, treat yourself with as much respect as you would treat, any stranger on the street.
At least, yeah.
Right. And also, too, even as I'm giving this advice, it's like, anybody who's going to give you advice, maybe take it with a little grain of salt, just because everyone's experience is different, and as much as you like to think, you can offer somebody advice, your experience, where you came from, what you did, is very different from theirs, and vice versa. So, even if someone thinks they've got it all figured out and can help you, just take it with a little bit of grain of salt, listen, figure out, remember where they came from and what they had and didn't have and what you have and don't have. And, just take it a little bit at a time. And I guess that's my advice, right? Just to say no sometimes, treat yourself with respect.
Is there some bad advice you got at some point?
No, I just feel like, it's that sort of mentality of like that person who's always so eager to give you advice may not have the best intentions, or they're just coming from a different place than you, right? Like, it's like, let me tell you what to do. No, I'm good. I can manage, but it's of course, it's one thing to genuinely want to help people, but it's another thing to offer unsolicited advice to young people just because you're old.
True.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm on the other side of that. I raised my hand over there, not the gross, nobody wants to hear you side. Great so far.
It's tough, right? Like, it's even when I was talking about feeling kind of removed from it for a couple of years, because it's so easy to be like, back in this day and age, we did this and that kind of stuff, and it's like, we didn't have it figured out 5 years ago, we didn't have it figured out 10 years ago, right? Like, right. So I'm not gonna try to pretend like the way I did it was any easier or better, right? So just if it's advice like, oh, hey, I got a really good headshot person for you, go talk to this guy over here, right? That's pretty good advice. But like, I don't know, just everything else, just I
mean, it all depends on who it's coming from, Derek.
Exactly.
And what their intentions are, for sure.
And Elana gives perfect advice every time.
I mean, I wouldn't say perfect every time, but
99% of the time.
But what's interesting though, because like advocating for yourself as an artist in this industry is super important. And I had I had a designer on a show who I had known from other companies, and so this was my first time working with them as producer. And so, we said whatever we said. We were trying to establish whatever, I don't know. And then they came back with, advocating, right? Like this is what I need. I haven't done that in X amount of time, blah, 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 so I responded like, okay, this is what we could do. Separately, I was like, now without my producer hat on, like, big ups for that advocacy for yourself. Like, I love it so much. I'm so excited for you. Keep doing what you're doing. I just got to deal with it, Like, I was just inside of that, it made me remember that. I was just like as a producer, I'm just like, oh, for fuck's sake, forefront. Like, we don't got, I don't know. Like, we usually do this. I don't fucking know. Growing pain. Fellow artists, I'm like, get it, homie, get it. Just absurd dichotomy of ideas.
I'm equally proud and annoyed by you at the same damn time.
And it tickled me to tell them that too. That's absolutely true. So yeah. Say no, advocate for yourself, take advice from wise people who know what they're talking about, but not those other people who don't.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you so much, Derek, for joining us on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it. And I meant what I said. Thanks for doing this and keeping this conversation rolling and talking with people like me and other understudies and yourselves. And these conversations are great. And I look forward to listening to everybody else who you have on this season.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks so much, Derek. I hope you had fun.
I did. Thank you.
Yay. We hope you enjoyed our conversation today with Derek Czaplewski and that it gives deeper insight into the art of understudying.
To send us a question or give a suggestion of someone we should interview, email us at understudypodcast@gmail.com.
Or hit us up at understudypod on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
We want to thank all of our Patreon subscribers, especially Marcella Huff and Stanley Sava.
If you want to support the show, head on over to our Patreon at patreon.com/understudypod.
Our theme song and all other music are by Laura McKenzie.
Our episodes are edited by me and produced by me and Elana.
Thank you so much for listening. If you liked it, please hit subscribe on your podcast player of choice and tell your friends.
And if you hated it, tell your enemies.
And also, stop hating it.
Yeah, just what's your problem? You listened all this way? And you hated it? Like, what the?
Come on!
Come on!
Okay, bye!
Bye!